The dust of Miles City, Montana territory, swirled around Emma Valez as she stood shackled on the auction block, her wrists raw from the iron chains that bound her to the wooden post behind her. The year was 1876, and the frontier town bustled with the usual mix of cowboys, miners, and settlers, but today they gathered for a more sinister purpose. Emma kept her chin high despite the humiliation burning through her veins. 3 days ago, she had been traveling west with hopes of starting anew as a schoolteacher when her stagecoach was ambushed by outlaws who saw profit in selling a young Mexican-American woman to the highest bidder. Next up, a fine woman of 20 years. Healthy, strong, and educated too, she can read and write better than most men in this territory. The auctioneer's voice boomed over the crowd of leering faces. Starting bid at $50, the bidding began, numbers climbing steadily as Emma fought back tears. She had escaped poverty in Texas only to end up here, treated like livestock. The late afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and thirst parched her throat. She closed her eyes, refusing to look at the men who shouted their offers. $120, a gruff voice called out, silencing the crowd. When Emma opened her eyes, she saw a tall man shouldering his way through the throng. His weathered face was partially obscured by the brim of his Stetson, but she could see the hard line of his jaw, covered in several days' worth of stubble. His buckskin jacket was dusty from the trail, and twin Colt revolvers hung from his gun belt. "Ethan Lowell," someone in the crowd muttered, and others stepped back to give the newcomer space. The auctioneer beamed. "120 from Mr. Lowell. Do I hear 130? "130, shouted another man, a portly saloon owner whose reputation for cruelty was known throughout the territory. "150, countered Ethan Lowell, his voice level but carrying an undercurrent of steel. The bidding continued, reaching $200 before the saloon owner reluctantly bowed out. The auctioneer's gavel was poised to fall when Ethan Lowell stepped onto the auction platform. With a swift movement that surprised everyone, he drew a knife and sliced through the ropes binding Emma to the post. "What in tarnation do you think you're doing?" The auctioneer sputtered, backing away as Ethan turned toward him with cold eyes. "This isn't right," Ethan declared loudly enough for the entire crowd to hear. "No person should be bought and sold like cattle." "The law," began the auctioneer. "The law in this territory is whatever men with conscience make it," Ethan cut him off. He tossed a heavy purse onto the wooden planks. "There's your $200. But understand this, she walks away free." He turned to Emma, who stood frozen in disbelief, and with gentle hands began working on the iron manacles around her wrists with a small key he'd somehow procured. As the shackles fell away, he looked directly into her eyes for the first time. "No chains with me, miss," he said quietly. "No person deserves to be bound." Emma rubbed her chafed wrists, studying this unexpected savior. "Why would you help me?" she whispered, wary of his intentions. "Because it's right," he replied simply. Then, more loudly for the benefit of the muttering crowd, "Miss, you're free to go wherever you please. I'll see you safely to wherever that might be." The auctioneer, having counted the money and finding it correct, shrugged and moved on to the next item. The crowd, disappointed by the anticlimactic ending, began to disperse. Ethan led Emma down from the platform, keeping a protective stance between her and the remaining onlookers. "I have nowhere to go," Emma admitted once they were clear of the auction area. "My belongings were stolen, along with the coach that was bringing me here. I was to be the new schoolteacher." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "Miles City still needs that teacher. The position remains unfilled. I know the town council chairman. We can speak to him directly." After what just happened, you think they'll still have me? Emma asked, doubt clouding her features. This wasn't your doing, Ethan replied firmly, and if anyone suggests otherwise, they'll answer to me. They walked through the dusty streets toward the more respectable part of town. Emma was acutely aware of her disheveled appearance. Her once fine traveling dress was dirty and torn at the hem, her dark hair falling loose from its pins. "Mr. Lowell," she began hesitantly, "I have no way to repay your kindness." "There's nothing to repay," he said, "and please call me Ethan." "I'm Emma Valez," she offered, "from San Antonio originally. That's a long way from Montana territory. I wanted a fresh start," she explained. "Somewhere my skills would be valued." Ethan nodded. "Teaching children is honorable work. Miles City needs good people willing to put down roots." They arrived at a substantial white clapboard house with a neat picket fence. The sign on the gate read, "Wilcox Residence." Ethan knocked firmly on the front door, which was opened by a gray-haired gentleman with spectacles perched on his nose. "Ethan Lowell," the man greeted with surprise. "What brings you to my doorstep in the middle of the afternoon, Judge Wilcox? This is Miss Emma Valez," Ethan said. "She arrived in town today under unfortunate circumstances, but she's the school teacher Miles City has been expecting." Judge Wilcox scrutinized Emma with kindly but assessing eyes. "There was word the teacher wouldn't be coming, something about the stage being robbed." "It was," Emma confirmed. "I was on that stage, the Outlaws." She faltered, unsure how to explain what had happened without bringing shame upon herself. "Miss Valez was brought to town against her will," Ethan stated flatly. "I've resolved that situation. She's ready to take up her position if the offer still stands." Understanding dawned in the judge's eyes. "Those bastards at the illegal auction block again. I've been trying to shut that operation down for months." He turned to Emma with compassion. "My dear, I'm terribly sorry for what you've endured. Of course the teaching position is still yours if you want it." Relief washed over Emma. "Thank you, sir. I'm eager to begin as soon as possible." "The schoolhouse has living quarters attached," Judge Wilcox explained. "They're modest but comfortable. School begins in 3 days, which should give you time to settle in." He paused, looking at her torn dress. "My wife is about your size. Wait here and I'll see if she can provide you with something more suitable to wear." As the judge disappeared inside, Emma turned to Ethan. "Why are you helping me?" she asked again, still struggling to understand his motives. Ethan's weathered face softened slightly. 10 years ago, I rode with a rough crowd. Did things I'm not proud of. One day, we came across a family father-mother, 2 children traveling west. My companions wanted to rob them, maybe worse. I couldn't stand by." His jaw tightened at the memory. "I made my choice that day about what kind of man I wanted to be." "And what kind of man is that?" Emma asked softly. "One who doesn't turn away when he can help," he replied simply. Before Emma could respond, Judge Wilcox returned with a bundle of clothing and a small purse. "My wife insists you take these," he said. "The dress should fit well enough, and there's a little money to tide you over until your first month's salary." "I can't accept," Emma began. "You can and you will," came a woman's firm voice as Mrs. Wilcox appeared behind her husband. She was a plump, maternal-looking woman with kind eyes. "Any decent person would help someone in your situation, my dear. Now, would you like to come inside and freshen up before heading to the schoolhouse?" Emma gratefully accepted the offer. Before following Mrs. Wilcox inside, she turned to Ethan. "Thank you," she said with heartfelt sincerity. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." "I'll see to it that your belongings are recovered if possible," Ethan promised. "And I'll check on you at the schoolhouse tomorrow if that's acceptable." Emma nodded. "I'd appreciate that very much, Mr. Lowell." "Ethan," he corrected with the faintest hint of a smile. Ethan, she repeated, feeling a strange flutter in her chest despite the ordeal she'd just endured. As Emma followed Mrs. Wilcox inside, Judge Wilcox turned to Ethan with a grave expression. Those auction runners need to be dealt with once and for all. This isn't the first time they've brought innocent people into our town. I know, Ethan agreed, and I intend to see that it's the last. The next morning, Emma awoke in the small but clean quarters attached to the schoolhouse. Mrs. Wilcox had helped her settle in the previous evening, bringing additional necessities, linens, kitchenware, and basic food supplies. The schoolhouse itself was a simple one-room building with rows of benches and desks, a teacher's desk at the front, and a blackboard mounted on the wall. Emma, dressed in the navy blue dress Mrs. Wilcox had provided, pinned her hair in a neat bun and began organizing the classroom. She found a stack of primers and readers, some chalk, and a ledger containing the names of 23 students ranging in age from 6 to 15. The routine of preparation calmed her nerves and helped push away the lingering fear from yesterday's trauma. Around midday, a knock at the schoolhouse door made her start. She approached cautiously, relaxing only when she saw Ethan's tall figure through the window. "Good afternoon," she greeted him, opening the door. Ethan removed his hat, revealing thick brown hair streaked with gold from the sun. "Miss Valez, I'm glad to see you settling in. Please call me Emma," she said. "Would you like to come in? I was just about to make some tea." He nodded and followed her into the attached living quarters. The space was small but efficient: a stove, a table with 2 chairs, a narrow bed in the corner, and a bookshelf already holding Emma's few salvaged books. "I spoke with the stagecoach company," Ethan said as Emma put the kettle on. "They're sending a man to try tracking where the outlaws might have taken your belongings." "That's more than I expected," Emma admitted. "I had resigned myself to starting over completely." "Miles City isn't as rough as it seems at first glance," Ethan told her, sitting at the small table. "There are good people here trying to build something worthwhile." "Like you?" Emma asked, setting 2 cups on the table. A shadow crossed Ethan's face. "I'm just passing through, helping where I can. I have a small ranch about 10 miles north of here, but I don't spend much time in town." "Yet everyone seems to know who you are," Emma observed. "I've been in the territory a long time," was all he said. The kettle whistled, and Emma busied herself making tea. As she set a steaming cup before Ethan, she gathered her courage to ask the question that had been bothering her since yesterday. "How did you know to be at that auction?" The word tasted bitter on her tongue. Ethan's fingers tightened around the cup. "I heard rumors in the saloon that morning." "Those auctions aren't legal, despite what they claim. The territorial governor outlawed human trafficking 5 years ago, but enforcement is difficult in remote areas." His eyes met hers, intense and serious. "I've been working to stop them whenever I can." "Alone?" Emma asked, surprised. "Sometimes with the help of Marshal Hayes when he's not busy elsewhere." Ethan took a sip of tea. "The territory is vast, and lawmen are few." They fell into a companionable silence for a few moments before Ethan spoke again. "The children will be lucky to have you as their teacher." Emma smiled, touched by his confidence. "I hope I can live up to their expectations. Teaching has been my dream since I was a girl." "What brought you all the way from Texas?" Ethan asked. Emma hesitated, then decided that after what he had done for her, Ethan deserved honesty. "My father died last year. He was a schoolmaster in San Antonio, respected by everyone. I assisted in his classroom for years, but when he passed, the school board wouldn't consider me for his position." Her voice took on an edge of bitterness. "They said a young, unmarried woman couldn't command proper respect, especially one of mixed heritage." Their loss is Miles City's gain, Ethan said firmly. Perhaps, Emma said with a small smile. Though after yesterday, I worry about how the parents will receive me. Judge Wilcox is spreading the word about what really happened, Ethan assured her. No one who matters will hold it against you. Before Emma could respond, another knock sounded at the door. This time it was Marshall Hayes, a stocky man with a bushy mustache and weathered face. "Miss Valez, I'm glad to find you settled," he said after introductions were made. "I've come about yesterday's incident." Emma tensed, but the marshal's next words reassured her. "We've arrested the auctioneer and 2 of his associates," he explained. "I need your statement about what happened, from the stagecoach robbery until Mr. Lowell intervened." For the next half hour, Emma recounted her ordeal, the ambush on the road, being separated from the other passengers, the 3 days held captive in a remote cabin before being brought to Miles City. Ethan remained silent throughout her telling, but she noticed his jaw tightening and his hands clenching into fists at certain details. "You've been very brave, Miss Valez," Marshall Hayes said when she finished. "With your testimony and Mr. Lowell's, we might finally shut down this operation for good." After the marshal left, Ethan rose to go as well. "I should let you continue your preparations," he said. "Is there anything you need?" Emma shook her head. "You've done more than enough already." Ethan hesitated at the door. "I'll be in town for a few more days. The trial for those men will happen quickly. Judge Wilcox doesn't tolerate delays in justice. If you need anything at all, I'm staying at the hotel." "Thank you, Ethan," Emma said softly, "for everything." After he left, Emma returned to organizing the classroom, but her thoughts kept drifting to the quiet, intense cowboy who had saved her from a terrible fate. There was more to Ethan Lowell than met the eye pain, and regret shadowed his gaze, but so did determination and honor. Despite her best efforts to focus on her new position, Emma found herself hoping he would call on her again soon. The next 3 days passed in a flurry of preparation. Emma met several of the town's residents who stopped by to welcome her, the general store owner and his wife, the blacksmith, and several mothers of her future students. Most were kind and welcoming, though she noticed a few guarded looks and whispers. News of her rescue from the auction block had spread quickly, and while most sympathized with her plight, small-town gossip was inevitable. True to his word, Ethan visited each day. He brought recovered items from her luggage, a small silver locket containing a miniature portrait of her parents, several books, and some of her clothing. The outlaws had apparently abandoned her trunk after taking anything of obvious value. On the morning school was to begin. Emma dressed with extra care in her best recovered dress, a sage green cotton with white collar and cuffs. Her stomach fluttered with nerves as she heard the first students arriving outside, their young voices carrying through the open windows in the early autumn air. A gentle knock at her private door surprised her. She opened it to find Ethan standing there, holding a small wooden box. "I thought you might need this," he said, offering her the box. Inside was an assortment of writing implements, pencils, pens, a bottle of ink, and a neat stack of paper. "The general store owner mentioned you hadn't had time to purchase supplies," Ethan explained. Emma was touched by his thoughtfulness. "Thank you. This is exactly what I needed." Ethan nodded, his eyes taking in her appearance. "You look every inch the school marm," he said with the barest hint of a smile. "Those children are fortunate." "Will you stay?" Emma asked impulsively. For the first day, at least. Something flickered in Ethan's expression, surprise, perhaps, or pleasure, before he shook his head reluctantly. "I have to testify at the courthouse this morning. The trial begins at 9. "Of course," Emma said, trying to hide her disappointment. "That's far more important. "I'll come by after if you'd like to hear how it went," Ethan offered. "I would," Emma confirmed. "The children will be dismissed at 3 o'clock." With a tip of his hat, Ethan departed, and Emma turned her attention to the daunting task of meeting her students. She walked into the classroom to find 19 children already seated, with more trickling in. They fell silent as she approached the teacher's desk, 23 pairs of curious eyes following her every move. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I am Miss Valez, your new teacher. I look forward to getting to know each of you as we learn together this year." The morning progressed better than Emma had dared hope. The children were generally well behaved, if naturally curious about their new teacher. She assessed their knowledge levels, organized them into appropriate groups, and began establishing the routines that would structure their days together. By the time she rang the bell for the midday break, Emma felt a growing confidence that she could indeed succeed here. As the children ate their packed lunches in the schoolyard, Emma noticed a group of women watching from across the street. Their expressions ranged from curious to openly hostile. One of them, a blonde woman in an expensive dress, eventually crossed over and approached Emma. "Miss Valez, I'm Victoria Hartwell," she introduced herself with a tight smile. "My husband owns the bank and our son Frederick is in your class." "Yes, Frederick seems very bright," Emma responded politely, recognizing the woman's name from town gossip, supposedly the most influential lady in Miles City. "I'll be direct, Miss Valez," Victoria said, lowering her voice. "There's been talk about how you arrived in town. Some parents are concerned about your suitability, given the circumstances." Emma felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her composure. "Mrs. Hartwell, I was the victim of a crime. I was traveling here legitimately to take up this position when outlaws attacked the stagecoach. What happened afterward was beyond my control." "Yes, well," Victoria sniffed, "some wonder if there might be more to the story, and then there's your association with Ethan Lowell." "Mr. Lowell saved me from a terrible fate," Emma said firmly. "I owe him my gratitude, nothing more." Victoria's eyebrows rose. "He's been calling on you daily from what I hear." "A man with his reputation—" "I'm not interested in gossip, Mrs. Hartwell," Emma interrupted, her patience wearing thin. "My personal life is my own affair, and my professional qualifications have been approved by the town council. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to prepare for the afternoon lessons." Victoria looked taken aback by Emma's firm response, but retreated with a stiff nod. As Emma turned back toward the schoolhouse, she noticed several children had witnessed the exchange. One girl, about 12 years old with dark braids, gave her an approving smile. The afternoon session went smoothly, and at 3 o'clock, Emma dismissed the children with their first assignments. As they scattered to their homes, she sat at her desk, reflecting on the day's successes and challenges, making notes for tomorrow's lessons. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear Ethan enter until his shadow fell across her desk. She looked up, startled. "I'm sorry," he said. "I knocked, but you didn't answer." "No, I apologize for being distracted," Emma said, gesturing for him to take a seat on one of the student benches. "How did the trial go?" Ethan's expression was grimly satisfied. "The auctioneer and his men were found guilty. They'll serve 5 years in the territorial prison. More importantly, they gave up names of others in their operation. Marshal Hayes is organizing a group to track down the ringleaders." "That's wonderful news," Emma said sincerely. "It's a start," Ethan agreed. "How was your first day teaching?" Emma told him about the children, their varying levels of education, and her plans for the coming weeks. She hesitated before mentioning Victoria Hartwell's visit. Ethan's face darkened at the account. Victoria has always considered herself the moral authority in Miles City. Pay her no mind. She seemed particularly concerned about my association with you, Emma noted carefully. She mentioned something about your reputation. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. I told you I rode with a rough crowd in my younger days. That history follows me, even though it's been years. What happened? Emma asked gently. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice low. After the war I fought for the Union. I was lost, angry. I fell in with a group of men who lived outside the law, not outright outlaws, but close enough. For 2 years I did things I'm not proud of. He paused. Then came that family I mentioned, the ones my companions wanted to rob. I stood against them, helped the family escape. My former friends didn't take kindly to that betrayal. What did they do? Emma asked, sensing there was more to the story. There was a fight. 3 men died that day, including their leader. Ethan's eyes had a faraway look. I nearly died myself. A Crow medicine man found me and saved my life. I spent months recovering with his people, learning their ways, rethinking everything I believed about myself and the world. Emma studied his face, seeing the weight of those memories etched in the lines around his eyes. That's why you stepped in at the auction. You couldn't stand by again. No one should be in chains, Emma. No one should own another human being. The passion in his voice made her heart beat faster. When I saw you standing there, I couldn't, he broke off, seeming embarrassed by his intensity. Thank you for telling me, Emma said softly. Your past doesn't matter to me, Ethan. What matters is who you are now. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. After a moment, Ethan cleared his throat and stood. I should go. You probably have work to do. Will I see you tomorrow? Emma asked, immediately wishing she could take back the eager question. A genuine smile lightened Ethan's features. If you'd like. I need to return to my ranch for a few days, but I could stop by before I leave town. I'd like that very much, Emma admitted. After Ethan left, Emma found it difficult to concentrate on her lesson plans. Their conversation kept replaying in her mind his honest account of his past, the connection she felt growing between them. She reminded herself firmly that she had come to Miles City to be a teacher, not to fall for the first man who showed her kindness. Yet something about Ethan Lowell called to her in a way no man ever had before. The following weeks established a pattern. Emma threw herself into teaching, gradually winning over even the most skeptical parents with her dedication and skill. Ethan divided his time between his ranch and town, stopping by the schoolhouse whenever he was in Miles City. Their friendship deepened with each visit as they shared stories of their lives, discovered common interests in books and music, and occasionally rode together on the weekends, exploring the beautiful Montana countryside. October brought the first frost and preparations for winter. One Saturday afternoon, Ethan invited Emma to visit his ranch. Propriety demanded a chaperone, so Mrs. Wilcox accompanied them, though she tactfully remained on the porch with her knitting while Ethan showed Emma around the property. The ranch was modest but well-maintained, a sturdy log cabin, a barn with 6 horses, a corral, and several outbuildings. What surprised Emma most was the garden behind the cabin, still producing late-season vegetables. "You grow your own food?" she asked, impressed. "What I can," Ethan replied. "The Crow taught me about using the land without depleting it. I'm still learning." Inside the cabin, Emma discovered another surprise: bookshelves lined one entire wall, filled with volumes on history, philosophy, natural sciences, and literature. "You didn't mention you were such an avid reader," she said, running her fingers along the leather spines. "Books were scarce in my childhood," Ethan explained. "I've been making up for lost time." The main room was simply furnished but comfortable, with a stone fireplace, a solid wooden table, and two well-worn armchairs. A desk in the corner held papers and maps. "It's lovely," Emma said sincerely. "Peaceful. It can be lonely," Ethan admitted, "especially in winter." Their eyes met, and Emma felt that now familiar flutter in her chest. Before either could speak, Mrs. Wilcox called from the porch that the afternoon was waning and they should start back to town. On the ride back, Emma found herself imagining what it would be like to share Ethan's tranquil home, to build a life there together. The thought both thrilled and frightened her. She had come to Montana to establish herself as a teacher, to prove her independence and worth. Yet increasingly, she found herself thinking of Ethan, wondering if there might be room in her carefully planned future for love as well. November brought early snows and the first real test of Emma's resolve. 3 new students joined her class, the children of a widowed rancher who had moved to the area. The eldest, a boy of 14 named Samuel, proved disruptive from the start. "My pa says we shouldn't have to learn from a Mexican woman," he announced loudly during his first day. "Says it ain't proper." The classroom fell silent. Emma kept her composure, though her heart raced with anger and hurt. "Samuel, in this classroom, we judge people by their actions and character, not by where their parents were born," she said evenly. "My father was from Mexico, and he was one of the finest teachers in Texas. My mother was from Boston, and she taught me that prejudice comes from ignorance. In this room, we seek to cure ignorance through education." Some of the children nodded in agreement, particularly those who had come to respect and even admire their teacher. Samuel slouched in his seat, unconvinced but temporarily silenced. The incident might have remained isolated if not for what happened the following week. Emma was walking home from the general store when she encountered Samuel's father, Harold Wilson, outside the saloon with several other men. Wilson, clearly intoxicated, blocked her path. "Well, if it ain't the Mexican schoolmarm," he slurred. "My boy tells me you're filling the children's heads with ideas about equality." "Mr. Wilson, your son is receiving the same education as every child in Miles City," Emma replied, attempting to step around him. Wilson moved to block her again. "I heard about how you came to town, too. Brought in chains and bought by that half-breed lover of yours, Lowell." Emma felt her face flush with anger. "You're drunk, Mr. Wilson. Please step aside." "Wilson, that's enough." The stern voice belonged to Judge Wilcox, who had emerged from his office across the street. "Miss Valez is a respected teacher in this community. You'll treat her with the same courtesy you'd show any lady." Wilson sneered but backed down in the face of the judge's authority. Emma continued home, shaken but determined not to show it. That evening, as she sat grading arithmetic papers, a knock at her door announced Ethan's arrival. One look at his face told her he'd heard about the confrontation. "Are you all right?" he asked, concern evident in his eyes. "I'm fine," Emma assured him, though in truth, Wilson's words had stung more deeply than she cared to admit. "It wasn't the first time I've encountered such attitudes, and it won't be the last." "Wilson had no right to speak to you that way," Ethan said, anger edging his voice. "Or to bring up what happened when you arrived." Emma sighed, setting aside her papers. "His words about me I can bear. It was what he said about you that bothered me most." Ethan's expression tightened. "Half-breed lover, I've heard worse." "Is it true?" Emma asked gently. "About your heritage?" Ethan was silent for a long moment. "My mother was Crow," he finally said. "My father was a trapper who actually married her properly, unlike most white men who took Indian women. When I was 10, she died of the fever. My father took me east afterward, tried to raise me as white." His mouth twisted. "It didn't take. I never fit in either world completely. That's why you were comfortable living with the Crow when you were injured, Emma realized. They accepted me back, though I was as much a stranger to their ways as to white ways by then. Ethan's expression softened as he looked at her. Does it matter to you what I am? Only insofar as it's part of what made you the man you are today, Emma answered honestly. The man who couldn't stand by and watch an injustice. The man I've come to. She faltered, suddenly unsure how to express the depth of her feelings. Ethan moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. The man you've come to what, Emma? Care for, she finished, her voice barely above a whisper. Very much. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken feelings. Then Ethan slowly, carefully, reached out to touch her cheek. His calloused fingers were gentle against her skin. I've tried to keep my distance, he confessed. You deserve better than a man with my past, with my blood. Shouldn't I be the judge of what I deserve? Emma challenged, covering his hand with her own. Ethan's smile was tinged with sadness. You're still new here. Your reputation, my reputation, will stand or fall on how I teach these children, Emma interrupted. Not on who I choose to care about. For a breathless moment, Emma thought Ethan might kiss her. Instead, he stepped back, though reluctance was evident in every line of his body. I need to go up north for a while, he said. Marshal Hayes has a lead on the men behind the auction ring. I've agreed to help track them. When? Emma asked, disappointed. Tomorrow. I might be gone a few weeks. Emma nodded, understanding the importance of the mission even as she worried about the dangers. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise, Ethan said solemnly, and when I return, he hesitated. When I return, we should talk about the future. I'd like that, Emma replied, her heart quickening at the implication. After Ethan left, Emma sat by her small stove, thoughts whirling. She had come to Montana seeking independence, a place to prove herself on her own merits. In just 2 months, she had established herself as a competent teacher, earned the respect of most of the community, and found herself falling in love with a man as complex and determined as she was herself. The future suddenly seemed full of possibilities she hadn't dared imagine before. The weeks of Ethan's absence dragged by. Winter settled over Miles City with a vengeance, bringing howling blizzards and temperatures that froze the breath in one's lungs. Emma kept busy with her teaching duties and preparations for the Christmas program, but she missed Ethan's visits fiercely. There had been no word from the posse, which Judge Wilcox assured her was normal given the remote areas they were searching. A week before Christmas, trouble arrived in the form of Harold Wilson. He burst into the schoolhouse during lessons, ignoring Emma's protests. Samuel, pack your things, he ordered his son. You too, Alice Thomas, he added to his younger children. Mr. Wilson, what is the meaning of this interruption? Emma demanded, moving to stand between him and the children. We're leaving, Wilson announced, heading to Idaho Territory. And good riddance to this town and its Indian-loving ways. Emma maintained her composure for the sake of the children, all of whom were watching wide-eyed. I'm sorry to lose your children as students, Mr. Wilson. They're welcome to take their books for continued study on your journey. Wilson sneered. Won't need your kind of learning where we're going. As the Wilson children gathered their meager belongings, Emma noticed young Alice crying silently. She knelt beside the 8-year-old. Remember what we learned about courage, Alice, she whispered. And know that education is something no one can ever take from you. The girl nodded, wiping her tears. Before leaving, she impulsively hugged Emma, earning a scowl from her father. After they left, Emma struggled to restore order to the classroom. That evening, she learned from Judge Wilcox that Wilson had lost his ranch to gambling debts and was fleeing creditors rather than making a principled stand against Miles City's values. Don't take it personally, my dear, the judge advised. Wilson is a troubled man who prefers to blame others for his failings. I'm more concerned about those children, Emma replied, especially Alice. She has a bright mind. The Christmas program went forward successfully despite the disruption. Emma's students performed recitations, sang carols, and presented handmade gifts to their parents. The schoolhouse was decorated with pine boughs and paper stars, and for a few hours, the community came together in celebration. After the program, as parents collected their children and departed into the snowy night, Emma remained behind to tidy up. The sound of the door opening made her turn, expecting a student who had forgotten something. Instead, Ethan stood in the doorway, snowflakes melting on his coat and hat. He looked tired and thinner than when he'd left, with several days' worth of beard darkening his jaw, but his eyes lit up when they found her. "Ethan," Emma exclaimed, unable to contain her joy. "You're back." "Just rode in," he confirmed, removing his hat. "I heard the singing and saw the lights. Thought I might find you here." Without hesitation, Emma crossed the room and embraced him. After a moment of surprise, his arms encircled her, holding her close. He smelled of pine and snow and horses, and Emma had never felt safer than in that moment. "I missed you," she admitted, drawing back enough to see his face. "I missed you too," Ethan replied, his voice rough with emotion. "Every day. Did you find them?" "The men behind the auction ring," Ethan nodded grimly. "3 of them. They won't be selling anyone else ever again." The finality in his tone told Emma not to ask for details. Instead, she reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the new lines of weariness around his eyes. "You need rest," she said, "and a hot meal." "What I need," Ethan said softly, "is to do what I've been thinking about for weeks." He lowered his head and kissed her, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as Emma responded. His lips were cold from the winter air, but they warmed quickly against hers. When they finally parted, both were breathing unevenly. "I was afraid you might have changed your mind while I was gone," Ethan confessed. "That you might have realized." Emma silenced him with another brief kiss. "My feelings have only grown stronger in your absence," she assured him. They left the schoolhouse together, walking through the snowy streets to Emma's quarters. Inside, she stoked the fire while Ethan removed his coat and boots. She prepared a simple meal of bean soup and cornbread, which he ate with evident appreciation. As they sat by the fire afterward, Ethan told her about the expedition, the grueling travel through snowbound mountains, the eventual confrontation with the criminal gang, the satisfaction of knowing they had put an end to at least one operation that trafficked in human misery. "Marshal Hayes believes there may be more such rings operating in the territory," he concluded, "but for now we've struck a significant blow." "I'm proud of you," Emma said, "though I worried every day." Ethan took her hand, his thumb gently stroking her palm. "I thought of you constantly. It helped me remember what I was fighting for." "And what was that?" Emma asked softly. "A world where people are free, where no one is judged by the color of their skin or the blood in their veins." His eyes met hers. "A world where a man like me might dare to love a woman like you openly." Emma's heart soared at his words. "Is that what you feel for me, Ethan? Love?" "Yes," he answered without hesitation. "I've loved you since the day I cut those chains from your wrists, maybe even before, when I saw you standing so proud despite everything." "I love you too," Emma confessed, the words bringing an overwhelming sense of rightness. "I think I began falling in love with you that first day when you said no chains with me." Ethan's smile transformed his tired face. "I meant it then, and I mean it now. I want you to be with me because you choose to be, not from obligation or gratitude." "My choice is clear," Emma assured him, moving closer. My heart is yours, freely given. They talked long into the night, making plans and sharing dreams. Ethan spoke of expanding his ranch, building a larger home. Emma discussed her hopes for the school, her ideas for adult education classes in the evenings. Together, they imagined a future that combined their separate visions into something new and beautiful. When Ethan finally left, propriety demanded he not stay the night. They had agreed that he would speak to Judge Wilcox the next day about performing a marriage ceremony after the new year. The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. News of their engagement spread quickly through Miles City, generating mostly positive reactions. Judge and Mrs. Wilcox were particularly supportive, offering to host the wedding reception at their home. Even Victoria Hartwell grudgingly extended congratulations, though she couldn't resist adding that she hoped Miss Valez knew what she was getting into. Emma continued teaching, having received assurance from the town council that her marriage would not affect her position. Married female teachers were still uncommon, but not unheard of in the more progressive Western territories. Ethan divided his time between the ranch and town, making improvements to the cabin in preparation for Emma's arrival. He added a second bedroom that could eventually serve as a nursery, expanded the kitchen area, and built additional bookshelves for Emma's growing collection of volumes. The wedding took place on a crisp January day in 1877, with snow blanketing the ground and sunshine creating diamond sparkles on every surface. Emma wore a dress of deep blue velvet that Mrs. Wilcox had helped her make, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Ethan, almost unrecognizable in a proper suit, waited for her at the front of the small church, his face lighting up when she entered on Judge Wilcox's arm. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When Judge Wilcox pronounced them husband and wife, the small gathering of friends and students burst into applause. Ethan kissed his bride with restrained passion, mindful of their audience but unable to completely hide the depth of his feelings. The reception at the Wilcox home lasted well into the evening, with food, music, and dancing. Emma's students presented the couple with a handmade quilt, each child having contributed a square. Marshal Hayes gave them a fine Winchester rifle for protection at the ranch, while Mrs. Wilcox's gift was a set of china dishes for when you entertain. As the celebration wound down, Ethan and Emma prepared to depart for the ranch. They would spend their wedding night there, before embarking on a brief honeymoon trip to Helena, where Ethan had business with the territorial governor. Something about land grants for schools, he'd said mysteriously. The journey to the ranch was magical, with moonlight illuminating the snowy landscape and stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. Emma, wrapped in furs against the cold, leaned against her husband's solid warmth in the sleigh, still marveling at the turn her life had taken. "Happy?" Ethan asked, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "Completely," Emma assured him. Though still a bit overwhelmed by it all, 4 months ago I was standing in chains on an auction block. Now I'm married to the most wonderful man in Montana territory, with a career I love and a community that has embraced me. "You earned their respect," Ethan reminded her, "through your own strength and determination." "We both did," Emma said. "People see the good in you now, Ethan. They recognize the man I fell in love with, honorable, compassionate, fighting for what's right." Ethan's arm tightened around her. "Whatever good I've done, you've inspired much of it. You make me want to be worthy of you, Emma." When they arrived at the ranch, Ethan insisted on carrying Emma across the threshold in proper tradition. Inside, she gasped in delight. The cabin had been transformed with fresh paint, new curtains at the windows, and a colorful rug on the plank floor. A fire crackled welcomingly in the stone hearth, and the scent of pine boughs decorated with red berries filled the air. "When did you do all this?" she asked, turning in a circle to take it all in. "I had some help," Ethan admitted with a smile. "Mrs. Wilcox and some of the ladies from town rode out yesterday. They said every bride deserves a properly prepared home." Emma's eyes filled with tears of happiness. "It's perfect." Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, the intimacy they had waited for now sanctified by marriage vows, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them together. From the horror of the auction block to this moment of perfect contentment seemed an impossible distance, yet here they were. "What are you thinking?" Ethan murmured against her hair. "That sometimes the worst moments in our lives can lead to the best," Emma replied, nestling closer to him. "If I hadn't been captured, if you hadn't been there that day." "I believe we would have found each other somehow," Ethan said. "Some things are meant to be. Like us?" Emma asked, smiling in the darkness. "Exactly like us," Ethan confirmed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "No chains, just love freely given and received. That's what makes a true partnership." "No chains," Emma echoed, the words that had first given her hope now a promise fulfilled. "Just love." Spring brought new beginnings in more ways than one. Emma continued teaching in Miles City during the week, with Ethan driving her to town on Monday mornings and bringing her home Friday evenings. The arrangement worked well, allowing Emma to maintain her independence while building a life with Ethan at the ranch. In April, Emma confirmed what she had suspected for several weeks: she was expecting their first child, due in late autumn. When she shared the news with Ethan, his joy was boundless. He immediately began planning an addition to the cabin, insisting their child would need plenty of room to grow. "And perhaps siblings eventually," Emma suggested with a smile. "As many as you want," Ethan agreed, kissing her tenderly. They decided Emma would finish the school term, which ended in June, and then take a leave of absence until after the baby was born. The town council, now firmly supportive of their talented teacher, readily agreed to the arrangement and began searching for a temporary replacement. Summer was a time of preparation and anticipation. Emma sewed baby clothes and prepared the nursery, while Ethan completed the cabin expansion and tended to the ranch, which was prospering under his careful management. They often sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in spectacular colors, talking of their hopes for their child and their future together. "I want our child to be proud of both sides of their heritage," Ethan said one evening, his hand resting gently on Emma's growing belly. "Mexican, Crow, Anglo, all of it makes them who they are. And we'll teach them that what matters most is the content of their character," Emma added. "Not the color of their skin or the language of their ancestors." "It won't always be easy," Ethan cautioned. "The world can be harsh to those who are different." "Then we'll make sure they're strong," Emma said with determination. "Like their father." "And wise," Ethan countered with a smile, "like their mother." In September, Emma received an unexpected letter from San Antonio. Her father's former assistant, now the schoolmaster, wrote to inform her that the school board had voted to name the new school library in honor of her father. The letter included a formal invitation for Emma to attend the dedication ceremony in the spring. "You should go," Ethan encouraged when she showed him the letter. "Your father would be proud to know his legacy continues." "We should go," Emma corrected. "You and the baby and I." "I want San Antonio to meet my family." Ethan's expression turned serious. "Are you sure? A mixed-race husband and baby might not be welcomed warmly in Texas." "All the more reason to go," Emma said firmly. "Some minds can only be changed by example." Their son, David Joaquin Lowell, was born on a clear October night with the assistance of both Mrs. Wilcox and a Crow midwife whom Ethan had known since childhood. The baby had his father's strong features and his mother's dark eyes, a perfect blend of their shared heritage. "He's beautiful," Ethan whispered, holding his son for the first time, awe and love evident in every line of his face. "He's free," Emma responded softly. "Born to parents who chose each other, who love each other. No chains for him, ever." "No chains," Ethan agreed, sitting beside her on the bed and placing their son in her arms. "Just love and opportunity and the freedom to become whoever he's meant to be." As winter settled once more over Montana territory, the Lowell family established new routines and traditions. Emma recovered her strength quickly and began planning for her return to teaching the following autumn. Ethan proved to be a devoted father, often carrying David in a traditional Crow cradleboard as he went about his ranch work. They traveled to San Antonio in April as planned, facing some prejudice but also discovering unexpected allies. Emma's speech at the library dedication moved many to reconsider their attitudes, particularly when she spoke of her father's belief that education was the surest path to true freedom. Upon their return to Montana, Emma and Ethan continued building their life together, adding a daughter, Elena Rose, to their family 2 years later. The ranch prospered, eventually becoming one of the most successful in the region. Emma's reputation as an educator grew, and she eventually became the superintendent of schools for the entire county. Throughout the years, through challenges and triumphs, their love remained constant, a love born in an unlikely moment of courage and compassion, when a woman in chains met a man who believed in freedom above all else. On their 20th wedding anniversary, as they sat on the porch of their now substantial home watching their teenage children and younger twins playing in the yard, Ethan took Emma's hand. "Any regrets?" he asked, the years having added silver to his hair but not dimmed the intensity of his gaze. "Not one," Emma replied truthfully. "Every step of our journey brought us here, and here is exactly where I want to be. Even the auction block," Ethan questioned softly. "Even that," Emma confirmed, "because it brought me to you, to this life we've built together. A life without chains, filled with love freely chosen every day." Ethan kissed her then, with the same tenderness he had shown on their wedding day 2 decades earlier. "No chains," he murmured against her lips. "Just love." "Just love," Emma echoed, her heart as full in that moment as it had been when he first cut her bonds and set her free, not just from physical chains, but from the limitations others had tried to place on her dreams. Together, they had forged a life that defied expectations and crossed boundaries, proving that love, freely given and received, was the most powerful force on the frontier and beyond. Their legacy would continue through their children and the countless students whose lives Emma had touched, a testament to the day a courageous cowboy had looked at a woman in chains and declared, "No chains with me."